I stopped getting Cosmo a long time ago because they had those little sex quizzes in there. What's your lovemaking style? I don't know. I got 3 jobs and 3 kids, and here's my lovemaking style. You want to do what? Like right now? I have so much to do. I have a list and you're not on it. Sorry.
Welcome, everyone, to the Rosie and Bill Show. Our guest this week transitioned from a career in which she passed the bar to one in which she achieved success in a much different kind of bar. Dry bar, to be exact. And if you've seen either of her dry bar specials, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Please welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show one of the funniest and one of the flat out nicest people in the comedy business today, Karen Morgan. Karen, welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm so glad to see y'all again.
Oh, we're happy to see you. That was so much fun when we came out to your show in Reading, Pennsylvania, and we're looking forward already to the next one. But thanks for coming on our show today. And Karen, I'm curious because you opened your career as a comedian, but before that you were an attorney presenting your closing arguments. But before all of that, what was life like for young Karen in your hometown of Athens, Georgia?
Growing up in Athens, Georgia, it's a college town. You maybe see some Georgia references behind me. And actually, this is a map of Athens on my wall. So I'm an Athens girl, went to school there and grew up there. And it's just a very cool town. We had a great music scene with REM and B-52s and Widespread Panic. And it's just a cool college town. It was a really great place to grow up.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we also appreciate our first and longest running sponsor of the show, Tom and his team of insurance professionals at the Malin Agency. If world-class customer service and doing business with someone you can trust is important to you, give Tom and his team a call today for all your insurance needs. Well, so speaking of the college town, Karen, when you went to the University of Georgia, did you have any idea at that time when you were first attending college what you wanted to do?
Good Lord, no. I started out pre-med. I think I started pre-vet because I wanted to be a large animal vet. And then quickly I was like, no, I'll be a doctor. So I was pre-med for 3 years. And then that didn't work out because I couldn't do physics. And apparently, I don't know why you had to do physics as a pre-med major, but you did, and I didn't pass. So I became an art major. And then I went to law school. So no, I didn't know at all what I wanted to do.
Wait a minute, how did you get from a vet to an art major to law school? How did that segue into that?
Well, I graduated from Georgia with a BFA in an art degree. And so I actually worked and did different things in different businesses that were related to my art degree. And about 6 years later, my dad had said when I graduated from college, you should go to law school, you'd be great at it. And I did 6 years of very boring jobs that I was just not happy with. And so I went to law school after that. And then
did you find that difficult to go back to law school? Because that's a big commitment.
I think because I was putting myself through law school and I was an adult at that point, and because I actually worked during the day and went to law school at night. So when you make that decision, you are committed, and it was definitely more suited to me than what I was doing because it was challenging to my brain. And I really just enjoyed it so much more that it was worth it to make that transition because I knew that's what I wanted to do at that time in my life.
You were a trial attorney, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
I remember my one sister saying, I thought about being a trial attorney, but then after working with them, in other capacities, she's like, you have no life. Is that true?
Oh, yes, very, very much so. Which is why after I had kids, I stopped practicing because you really do. As a trial attorney, your schedule is, and it doesn't matter what area you're in. I did medical malpractice and criminal defense were my two main areas that I worked in. And, you're on a trial schedule. You don't have much of a personal life, at that point. So I did not feel once I had kids, I was like, you know what? I think I really do just want to stay home with my kids and do that correctly. So if I got to pick one, I'm going to pick my family.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
What was
yeah,
the best thing about being an attorney, and what was the worst thing about being an attorney?
I think the best thing still to this day, which I actually do take into comedy, I really enjoyed research and writing. And people say, did you perform? You don't really perform. I'm comfortable talking to people. I enjoyed just sort of the research and writing part of it. The worst part is that you do argue a lot with other people all day. And that got really tiresome to me as a human being. I mean, I don't enjoy arguing like in general. So that was the hardest part because it doesn't fit my personality really.
wow. Well, I give you a lot of credit, Karen, for choosing family and being there for your kids. And I also think that I look back at what I've read about that part of your life, and it's kind of like I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And I really think there's a series of events there in your life, whether it was, you're staying home with the kids, but then you take this comedy workshop. And while taking the comedy workshop, a contest pops up on Nickelodeon and you're encouraged to submit for it. And then the whole trajectory of your career changes. So can you walk us through that?
Sure. So, many people do this. You'll take a comedy workshop just to people try stand up. It's just something you're going to try out. So I tried it out at our local. Bye. My husband's leaving. Well, he's leaving on his bike. So he's letting me know he's going on his bike. In case he doesn't come back, I will know where that he's on the side of the road or somewhere.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, so I took the comedy workshop, and it just happened when you finish a workshop, usually you'll have a graduation show. And usually people will videotape that. So you'll have a memento of your graduation show, of your stand-up comedy class. And my teacher said to me, of course, we had back then, the VHS tape, the big plastic brick. He said, hey, they're having Search for the Funniest Mom in America on Nick at Night. You should send your stuff in. Because at the time, my kids were babies, they were little. And so most of my material was just about being a mother, because that's the world I was in at the time. And so anyway, they took it. He sent the tape in. They had over 1,000 entries, and then they narrowed it down to 21. We went to New York. They narrowed it to 21. We went back to New York, they narrowed it to 14, and then we went back to New York and they narrowed it to 7. So I was in the top 7 of that group. And then so after that was over, I didn't win. Leanne Morgan didn't win. There's a lot of people that are on that are still doing comedy. But what at the time I looked around, and Blue Collar Comedy Tour was just on fire at the time. And I was looking at that, and their DVDs at the time, it was a DVD, was off the charts. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had like a blue collar comedy tour for moms? So I grabbed 2 of the moms and produced a show that turned into a tour. My original thought was, let's make a DVD, like a blue collar comedy tour DVD. But then we ended up with a booking agent that said, hey, no, you can take this show into performing arts theaters. And because it's, clean and it's based on, motherhood, it would sell really well. And it did. So we toured with that for 5 years. That group was called Mama's Night Out. And because I named it that, because my comedy workshop was my night out. So when I named the comedy tour as a Mama's Night Out. So I toured with that for like 5 years. And then I was on the road a whole bunch. And I was starting to miss, as my kids got older, I was starting to miss their games and their ski races and all the things that I stopped practicing law to be home to do. I was starting to miss because I was out doing comedy. So I made a decision at that point. You know what? I'm going to come off the road and be a full-time mom. And I did shows, local shows in New England, but not really the sort of, national touring stuff that we had done earlier. And I did that until, ironically, 2020 was my year to go back out on the road because that's when all the kids were going to be in college at the same time. So that didn't happen. So I feel like I just now, I mean, it's 2024, but I feel like I'm just now doing what I was planning to do in 2020. And it took, a few years to get post-COVID, particularly with the performing arts centers and theaters, which is where the majority of my shows are. They came back last. Their demographic and their ticket buying audiences were older, and they were just, they couldn't really put a whole bunch of people next to each other in masks. The first couple of shows we came back, people had masks on. That was weird. But anyway, so fast forward to now, I'm finally doing what I was going to do in 2020. So that's where I'm at right now.
How did you find, though, you said when you started it, your kids were babies, but you started touring right away. How did you work all that out?
Well, that man that just left on his bicycle was a very big help. He was, we don't have nannies or babysitters or anything. It's just us. So he did a great job. We had, if I was gone for a longer time, like maybe my mom would come up or something like that. But for the majority of it, he was able to, stay home with the kids, and he's self-employed too. So it's like we made it work. But towards the end of it, it was like, you know what? I wasn't really happy being gone that much. And I didn't tour even back then. It was not like week to week touring. It was like every other week or every other weekend. It wasn't full on gone all the time, which some of my friends do. They're full-time road comics. They don't really ever go home very much. And I was just at that point couldn't have done that anyway.
I don't blame you. I mean, it is really hard to miss those special moments, even if it's not a milestone moment, just, the family gatherings, the being together. It's hard to miss all of that.
Yeah, just being just the everyday thing. I really do. My motto has always been family first. And I've had some opportunities that I've turned down, and it's like, you know what? I've never regretted putting family first in any of these times, because that's really the most important thing to me.
Yeah, and Karen, before I ask my next question, I just have to say something, because listening to you talk about, the relationship and the partnership really with you and your husband, and your desire to be there with your kids. I mean, we all have stresses, everybody's busy, but I think when you have the right priorities, and clearly I think you and your husband had the right partnership to make it work. So I just want to say kudos to you guys for doing it the way that you did it. And thank you for showing that it can be done.
And thank you for appreciating that, because it just, everybody can do it different. There's no wrong way, there really isn't a wrong way to do any of this stuff. But it's just, everybody has to make choices, and sometimes it means you're making sacrifices, and, but that's also true with any couple in any industry. I think, everybody's got to make a choice for what they're doing. This has worked well for us. We will be married 28 years this year. I can't remember what, anyway, a long time. So, and we still like each other. We still hang out. So it's, and I'm very proud of our kids. I think our kids have turned out to be very well-rounded, good humans. And, I think, I would have missed not being around to be able to make sure that I was part of that, and I don't know, I can't take full credit that they're good humans because I was their mother, but at least I knew that I was around trying to make sure those basic things are met, to be kind. I've never cared what my kids' grades were. I want you to pass. I'm paying for college, but, but are you a kind human? Are you empathetic with other people's issues? And so I feel like, hands-on parenting, whether you're a married parent or a single parent, it is the hardest job in the world, but the most important job in the world.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, Karen, there's another aspect of your comedy that I wanted to touch on, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, and that is you're considered, it's funny, I've read clean comic, or one article said mostly clean comic, which I thought was interesting. And I would say, regardless of whether it's clean or mostly clean, you're always funny. And Rosie and I know that firsthand from seeing you in person and seeing your specials. But I'm wondering, as a clean comic, especially in today's world, does that make it easier more difficult, or does it really not have much of an impact when it comes to writing your material?
It is a different challenge to write clean depending on your life perspective. I don't have a problem writing clean. Every now and then I'll say, I swear at home. I'm not I'm not clean all the time. I will swear at home, but in terms of my writing, I know what my demographic likes and I know what I like. I write for myself, quite honestly. I write when stuff is funny to me, I will write it. And generally, because it's some sort of shared life experience with my demographic, they're going to find it funny too. This is our shared life experience. It is hard for some people to write clean if they're not used to it, I think. Um, I admire greatly people like Brian Regan, who really does set the bar pretty high for it completely clean, but also so incredibly funny, just never not hilarious. And I think because I work mostly in theaters and performing arts centers, I know that there's sort of a line that really can't be crossed in those venues. So I write to as if I'm going to be in those. And as a matter of fact, sometimes when I'm in comedy clubs, which is not often, I mostly do the theaters. I feel like, oh, maybe they want me to swear here because I'm around people on shows in those venues that are not completely clean. And I'm always like, oh, well, maybe I don't fit in here because I'm clean. It's definitely hard to follow another act that's dirty as a clean comic, depending on where I'm at. But it takes a different skill that again, I've just been writing for so long and I've been writing clean for so long. I don't think about it anymore. But if someone has not been a clean comic in their writing, it may take them a while to get in the groove.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good point, but you're also writing from your own experience. Do you bounce off these things on your husband and your kids?
No. No, but I will now that my kids are older, like my son, when I went out to Los Angeles a couple weeks ago to do a thing, we went to Disneyland and my youngest is now 22. And we were just doing some observations as adults in Disneyland. And he's like, Mom, this would be a great bit. This would be a great bit if you write something about this, which is kind of really fun now to have them be that age and knowing that I might write something about it. So, but no, in terms of bouncing stuff off of anybody, I don't.
Do they get offended if you say something about them?
No, because I would never cross that line with my family of saying something that would be too private or too, I just wouldn't go there. And I've heard comics talk about their spouses or their kids in a way that I'm like, that wouldn't work for me because it would, I wouldn't want to hurt their feelings or anything like that. They know when I'm writing something and like when I talk about my kids in their dorm shopping and all those things that happened, they've heard it all. So, but did I say I'm gonna do this thing about when we went dorm shopping before I do it? I don't do that, but but I would never say something I think would be harmful to their feelings or hurtful in any way. I just wouldn't do it anyway.
Right.
Before we go any further, I need to bring something up, and that is the fact that you have saved countless numbers of lives over the years because of your involvement, your support, and your advocacy of walking groups. And I, for one, think there should be some sort of community service award or something given for all the good you've done for every community you've served. What do you think?
Well, it is true. Walking groups save lives. They do. Walking groups save lives. People say you need to get the shirt. We need the shirt. I'm like, I don't have a lot of merch to sell at my shows, but walking group saves lives. It has been requested by many people. And it's true. Walking group saves, even if you don't have a group, even if you're just walking by yourself, that can also save lives. It can save your life and it can save the lives of those around you that you would have strangled otherwise.
My favorite magazine right now is called Garden and Gun. And it's a real magazine. It's a real magazine. Dawsonville, you may know Garden and Gun. Garden and Gun is a real magazine for middle-aged Southern women who want to pull weeds and contemplate who we want to shoot right in the head. And it's true, middle-aged women, we want to shoot at least 5 people in the head every single day. We do. But we don't do it, right? That's wrong. That's murder. So what do we do when we have murderous thoughts? We call our friends and we go to our walking groups. Just go, and you'll see middle-aged women, we're walking in pairs and fours down the street, and everybody's just walking. We're just getting it all out. Just, and my husband was like, why don't you just go for a run by yourself? I'm like, I can't. We're saving lives.
Now, Karen, I had one last question for you, and that is, if you look back at your comedy career, your legal career, everything you've done, what would you say you're most proud of?
My kids and my husband, my family. It really, there's nothing that compares to the family unit that we have here. We have a great team, and I say that in the sense that they are also super supportive of what I've done. And if I had to pick one thing that's not family, because I used to do this game show. I did a show with my friend Jim Carlton. It was called Lawn and Disorder. And we would bring couples on stage that had been married a long time. It was kind of like a newlyweds game. And one of our questions was, what's the greatest gift your spouse ever gave you? And we always had to say, it can't be them. Like, so if you take family out as the answer to this question, I think just sort of being true to who I am. I don't write, I write for myself. I write in my style. I've never sort of tried to, copy another comic or their style. I'm me. So if that's sort of an overarching thing of the, but I think that also goes back to, I started at age 40. I knew who I was.
Right.
And the basics of it, I've learned myself as I've gotten older, and my kids have gotten older at different stages of life. But I started out kind of knowing who I was, and I've stayed true to that and not tried to be something that I'm not.
Well, that's great advice, especially for new comics starting out.
And it comes through. It really comes through.
Yeah, definitely. Before we go, were you funny growing up?
No. No, I was a huge nerd. I was a nerd. When we went to Disneyland the couple weeks ago, we went straight to Star Wars Galaxy Edge, and we stayed there for 6 hours, and we were like the happiest nerdy people you've ever seen. And so no, I was pretty quiet. I've always, even growing up, I always enjoyed comedy. Like I grew up with my dad watching Johnny Carson and watching Saturday Night Live when it came out, and appreciate and watching SCTV, all of those older shows back in the 70s. So I've always grown up appreciating comedy. Never had, the desire to be that person. I always just liked it and enjoyed the sense of humor that comedy brings. But I wasn't great funny. And some days I'm just myself. So I don't feel like I am that person that's on all the time. If you see me in real life, I am an introverted person. I had this hat on and my earbuds in at the airport, and I am not on. Sometimes people say, "What do you do?" I've stopped saying I'm a comedian. I've stopped. I say I'm a writer. If somebody has to have an answer, I will say writer. So I was not like the class clown or any of those kind of people growing up. And some of my friends that do comedy, that they were that person, and they still are that person that's on. It's just not me. I'm going to tell you a true story. It's going to be funny because you probably had something similar happen to you, but am I going to be yucking it at the dinner table with you? Probably not.
Right. Well, that's, like you said, you're being who you are, and who you are happens to have a perspective and an ability to communicate that perspective in a really humorous and funny way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a gift. Not everybody can do that. You're not relying on, shtick.
Correct. Right. And this is why I don't do, some people do comedy improv that, they're really good improvers. I'm terrible at that because it's asking me to be somebody that I'm not. I have to be a character or I have to do a scene. I'm like, no, I got to tell you what happened at the grocery store this morning. That's even funnier to me.
That's awesome. Well, listen, Karen, thank you so much for coming on the show. We always enjoy speaking with you, and we will be looking for you in our area again next time you come around. But good luck, and we do hope you do a third dry bar special.
I do too. They're great people. They've done a really nice job at really getting clean comedy out there, and they have had a great reach to people. And I'm appreciative of them because I have an audience that I wouldn't have had nationally without these two dry bar specials. And finally the new album is out, so that's going well right now in terms of the play on Sirius XM radio. So anyway, I'm working on my fall calendar for next year, 2025. So maybe I'll get back to close to where y'all are for next year. I'd love to see y'all again.
We'd love to see
Same
you
here.
too. We thank you so much. Folks, Karen Morgan, keeping it clean. Check her out. And thank you for tuning in, folks. We'll see you next week.
I'll give a little example of my husband, why we've been married so long. I'm not a nagger. You have to pick your battles. I don't nag. I'm just not a nagger. So one evening, my son came in to borrow my hairdryer out of my bathroom, and he grabbed it so hard that he broke the outlet that the hairdryer was in. My husband came home from work, and I said, "Hey, he broke the outlet. Can you fix my hairdryer outlet?" And he said something to the effect of, "Bleh. Kids, bleh. House, bleh. Bourbon." And so, and I know I've told him, he knows, I've given him the information. I'm not a nagger. He's got it all in there. Oh, I have to also say that my husband builds houses for a living. So the things in our house are always broken. We had one particular house that he never put doorknobs in the doors in the upstairs, so we just had circle holes. Just circle holes. I'd just be trying to go to the bathroom, and the kids were like, Mom, 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 Mom. Literally, we sold the house. He put the doorknobs in the next day. I'm like, thanks so much. So I told him, so he's got the information. He knows it's broken, right? I've asked him if he could fix it. I don't want to be a nagger. I'm not going to do that. Next day, he hadn't fixed it, so I had to go in the bedroom and squat down to the outlet that's on the floor to dry my hair. So I'm squatting and drying my hair, and I'm glaring and squatting. I will admit, I'm glaring and squatting. I did this for like 2 weeks. Still didn't fix it. I went to his truck, and I got this extension cord that they use on job sites. It's like a big yellow, thick, it looks like a snake. It's huge. And I put it like through his pillow and like all through his shoes and just all and just across the. So the man knew there was an issue, right? 2 more weeks with this, right? So now I'm going on a month without my outlet being fixed, but I'm not a nagger. I didn't nag. I didn't say anything. Finally, he comes in and goes, Karen, listen, I kind of need my extension cord back for work. And I was so proud of myself. I said very calmly, I will give your extension cord back if you will fix my outlet. And the man said to me, why didn't you tell me it was broken? And this is how murder-suicides happen.
This week's episode has been brought to you by Doherty & Company Insurance Services for all your business and personal insurance needs. Our friends at Tennis Addiction in Exton, PA. And the Malin Agency, where exceeding expectations is how they do business.